Guests of the evening are the stars of the upcoming production of Native Gardens at the Denver Center Theater Company. So please welcome Jordan Baker and Mariana Fernández. Hi, how are you ladies?
Good.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for coming down across the street from the Denver Center for us.
Yes.
Let's just start talking about Native Gardens. So what kind of is Native Gardens in your guys' words?
You know, it's a play that sort of poses the idea that we should all be able to live next door to each other. No matter our sex, our race, our religion, or our gardening practices. And I think, you know, with all the chaos and the conversation that's going on right now in our country, the beautiful thing about the play is that we kind of take on those topics in a pretty hardcore way, but with humor.
Yeah.
So we can still listen. So we're still listening to each other.
Yeah. And this show, it's so clever in the way that it's written with these two couples, you know, an older American and a young Latino couple that are living next door to each other. And even with their differences, the way that they unbeknowingly, they insult each other, the microaggressions that happen, that you assume that you're right. And like Jordan said, when are you actually listening and taking in another point of view? And you get to see it on both sides of the fence.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, this is a humorous show. So although it deals with some, you know, current topics, it's a comedy.
Yes.
Kind of just about two people, two families, like you said, you know, and over a garden dispute, a border dispute along their gardens. Yeah, it's a border dispute along the gardens.
Exactly right.
So talk more about your characters and who you play. Jordan, why don't we start with you?
On my side of the fence, my character is based on cultural privilege. And even though my character has come from a blue-collar background in Buffalo, you know, I really, and being a woman who was good, obviously, as a child at mathematics, and worked her way up through an education system that allowed her to get to become now a top executive at Lockheed Martin, I have to own the fact that while I struggled maybe as a woman to get up through those levels, my skin helped me. There was a privilege there that I was white. And so I'm not owning that this went on, that anybody could have done what I did because I was poor and I made it to the top. Well, I'm not owning or being open to the idea that, well, not everybody gets the shots I get because there was something about my skin that allowed some doors to open. And so my character has to be willing to listen and maybe open the door a little bit wider to sort of see what somebody else's experience truly was, rather than judging it and assuming that they could have done what I did. We're all quite different. And no, it doesn't really work that way. There are some how should I say, cultural issues going on that we don't want to admit that we actually participate in.
Yeah. What about your character?
I get to play Tanya, who is from a Native American background, and she is married to Pablo, who is a wealthy, grew up with privilege and money in Chile. So, you know, they're both minorities in the United States. And what I love about this character is that she's finishing her dissertation in anthropology and sociology studies of origins, and there's a slide of when people claim them, when you stop, how you identify. So she's very well aware of all, you know, the facets of people's privilege or where they come from, how they relate to other people. And so I think that she's very grounded in all of this and witnessing how these characters relate, and also calling her husband out on, like, yes, you are a minority, but at the same time you grew up with a silver spoon in your mouth. So knowing those things, and so she has the strength to her and this vision. But that being said, is also flawed and has her own microaggressions that she tosses onto her neighbors. So that's why it's fascinating to watch the different facets of these characters.
Also, what sets off the humor a bit is that we are real mama bears when it comes to our husbands and what our husbands want and what we're willing to sort of swallow and kind of like, I'm going to get it done for you, baby. Don't worry. Don't worry, you know, like that. And the two of us actually probably would be great friends at the end of the day because there's some things we really connect on. But that's the part that sort of starts the humor. The husbands want some things, and the women are like, don't worry, I'm going to get it for you.
Yeah.
We're going to take care of you.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah,
I like
do
it.
it.
Talk more about those microaggressions that you were talking about that this play deals with, because I feel like that's relevant in today. There's some things that, people just don't know is insulting or, to other cultures because they didn't come from that. So talk about getting to kind of portray those in a comedic light on stage.
I think the worst one that I have, not to give too much away, but is a conversation that happens early on in the play where they've come to our garden, which is highly manicured, English gardening, and I guess you should explain native gardening, but anyways, they've come to our garden, and we have assumed that they're Mexican. Like, we've just defined it, like, that's it, they are Mexican. But there's a wide range of where people come from in the world, and so they are educating us as how that is. And so it's how we throw it off. Oh, you look so Mexican. Oh, you must be Mexican. Oh, you sound like you're Mexican. And
We love Mexico.
We don't stop. We love Mexico. It's like, it's so funny how it's done. You sort of see it, like that's sort of what happens at the picnic barbecue, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that you have these automatic assumptions of, I think Tanya is hyper aware of like who these people are, trying to listen to them, their background, their stories. But then, there are these lines, like I asked him, like, do you listen to National Public Radio? Like,
That would be something I hadn't heard of.
Clearly they're old, so you have no idea what this is.
Exactly.
And so it's those little comments like that you're just like,
She thinks of us as Dick Van Dyke, the Dick Van Dyke Show. That's how she thinks of us. Ageism comes up.
ageism and
Right.
racism and classism, and so all of these things that are not always super overt, that you don't get these like lashing out offensive, but they're the undercutting, they're the ones that like the
Exactly.
That we
digs.
don't realize we're doing to each other.
And what's it like to get to do a show where, kind of addresses that to the audience, but in a, a funny way? It's not,
Well, You have to talk about native gardening, because we all kind of know what English gardening is. I think it's that manicured kind of controlling nature. But talk a lot.
Yeah, well, and that's the title of the show, right? It's because here you are seeing two different couples on two sides of one fence, one with a very manicured European style, gorgeous garden, and then I'm coming into this neighborhood and wanting to put in, like, going back to the basics, the original, like, how do we find these beautiful indigenous plants that can feed and be better for the environment? And the dispute
that we
with
would
that.
perceive as weeds.
Yeah, and that they're
It's weeds to us.
they're
We don't
ugly.
put them.
Exactly.
But you're talking more about how bugs and plants and the whole symmetry of how the cycle of how life works, and that we should participate in that. And then we'd save water, and we'd be better for the environment. And it's that whole conversation going on about how two people look at how they're just going to do their backyards.
And my last question for you guys before I let you guys go, what's it like getting to work in the space theater? Because it's a very interesting space and a very fun
Well, we're
space.
moving in today.
Moving in, okay.
We
we're
have
so
been in there.
excited.
We're getting a tech today, but it's one of the most beautiful spaces. I have to admit, this theater company, Denver, whatever the community here has put in to the Denver Center. It's my first time here. My husband was here last year doing The Christians, and it's just a first-class organization. As actors, we've said from the time before we even left our homes in New York to come here to do the show, everyone at that company just treats you like gold, and they've thought so ahead of like what would be kind to us. And so that theater it's a real gift that you've given your community, and that you've spent time and put effort into it and stand by it, because it's an extraordinary thing. It's not happening in every single state in America. It is a unique thing to Denver and to Colorado.
And I feel very lucky. I was able to be here 2 years ago, and I remember how impressed I was not only by the amazing working environment, the people, but also, like you said, the community, the people that support the arts in Denver, how cultural the city is, how alive it is. All of that, like Jordan said, not every city has this. Even coming from New York, like this idea of people like having this complex, and so many forms of art are being supported in there. It's amazing.
Yeah, so it's been exciting. It's been fun to be here.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you guys both for coming down
Thank
here.
you.
And coming on. Yeah.
All right.